Oh, hello, Andrew.
You get a wee surprise there, Gary.
I wasn't expecting to see you at 8 o'clock on a Wednesday evening.
42 weeks, Gary, we've been doing this.
42 weeks. We're planning the birthday party, Andy.
Oh, are we? What are we planning, Gary?
A birthday party. It'll be 1 year since we've done our first show. That's what a birthday is, Andy.
We'll need to get dressed up, party hats on, and a cake, and socially distanced, of course, Gary. We can't do any of that getting together quite yet.
No, it's streamers and party poppers. We'll get with doo-doo-doo. You got a doo-doo-doo.
I don't know how to play doo-doo-doos on this, Gary, but I'll figure something out.
Oh, the doo-doo-doos. It's a toilet roll. Doo-doo-doo. Or it's a comb with a bit of paper. Doo-doo-doo.
Jeez, the things that they do down in Gallagher to make fun at parties, Gary.
Upper Gallagher, Andy.
Upper Gallagher, I'm Lord Glenburn. So, good evening, folks. Welcome to episode 42.
Andy, tonight's motto.
Go on.
The show must go on, Andy.
The show must go on.
What's the score anyway, guys? Is there anyone in that's going to keep score? I see John McIntyre's returned. Rangers must be playing another night. Anyway,
John's sharp off the blocks tonight. Evening, Norma. Roddy's in. Judith's in.
Elizabeth's in from Chicago. Hello, Elizabeth.
Oh, fantastic. Terry's having his weekly bath.
An early dip.
Early dip. Terry's in the bathtub watching the chat show. Elizabeth, good to see you as always from Chicago. Paul's in the house. Fantastic. Good to we've got Australia calling.
Oh, that's good. So Chicago,
Australia. Folk joining us from all over. It's great to see everyone tonight. Welcome. It's been quite a kind of interesting week, has it not, Gary? From a kind of weather perspective.
I nearly went out, Andy, and then I looked outside and thought, nah. I went a couple of runs. I've been out and then it snowed.
Right.
There's Paul with the results in. The results in thick and fast. Thanks for that update, Paul.
Paul's going to be keeping us updated. Fantastic.
Aye, so I nearly went out on my bike, Andy, and the snow came down. And I thought, I'm not doing that.
Now we always do a wee kind of what caught our eye section at the start of the show, and there's been a lot catching my eye this week. And I know, Gary, we're going to talk about some things that caught your eye, but it was good to see these guys out and about.
Yes, yeah, that's the local guys. I can see the names on them. What is that, Andy? Tony Gritzpatrick, Plaulio Grattini. And what's the other one? What's that?
Well, I think it's Paisley, but there's a whole raft of gritters. But I started to look at some of the fantastic pictures because, of course, folks, we've had some fantastic snow. Well, it depends. You might not like the snow, but we've had some great snow, and there's been a whole batch of photographs taken. And I just wanted to quickly show a couple of these, Gary, that caught my eye this week, because this one is gritter themed. Are you ready for this beauty?
Aye.
Look at that. Now, that one is Patrick Bradley posted that one up on one of the Paisley pages, but that just looks fantastic. Bradley, Patrick, I hope you were safe taking that picture because that looks awfully dangerous. You didn't get some grit in the eye, I hope, when the gritter passed you.
Andy, what was the settings on that camera? Do you know?
Oh, I have no idea. I could probably find out. And then I've got a couple of pictures from Hector Burns. I don't think that's his real name, but Hector Burns. Look at this one.
Woof! Where's that?
That's the kids out socially distanced doing their sledging in Barshaw Park.
Is that the big hill? Or was that just a strange angle?
Well, I think I think Hector Burns has got a drone because he took this one of Barshaw, the Royal Barshaw Golf Course, Gary. Look at that.
Yeah, it's a good round.
That's a fantastic.
Used to sneak on at 14.
Oh, aye, onto the Royal Barshaw. That's the first down at the bottom, from what I remember.
That's an amazing picture, that, Andy.
That's a cracking picture, absolutely cracking. And 2 other final pictures from me, Gary. So that one was Hector Burns. This one came in from Catherine Watt, who's usually sneaking about people's tenements.
Yes.
But this time she's obviously been rumbled doing the tenements, and she's decided to take some outdoor pictures. And this one's Coates as we know it. And down the other end of the town, Philip and McManus caught this one.
Oh, I've seen that. Almost 3D, Andy. I've seen that one. That's an absolute cracker.
A belter. So, folks, keep up the brilliant work with all those photos, because it just, for us that aren't getting out so much due to lockdown, when you see your town looking as amazing as that in the snow, thank you so much, everyone.
Andy, one of them needs to be a jigsaw. See the golf course one?
The golf course one?
Yeah.
That one there, Gary?
Jigsaw. Annette's coming on soon.
We'll talk about jigsaws.
Get that in the bag for the jigsaw. Anyway, we'll tell you about the jigsaws and all that. I don't know when
your eye this week, Gary.
What caught my eye?
Aye.
A million vaccinations caught my eye, Andy.
Big number, Gary.
That's 20% of our population if you do it roughly.
Is that a million in Scotland?
A million in Scotland, yeah. So up here we've done a million, and it's rapidly going up the way.
You'll be getting yours soon, Gary, though, eh?
Oh, I am at that age.
You'll be.
They're running about the parks after all the sledgers to give them the jag. Because that's where everybody is.
They're all at the park. But a million vaccinations in Scotland, that's good going. Good going.
Oh, what's this? What is this? I'm getting abuse again. What have I done? What's going on?
They didn't have cellars in Thrushcraig's, Paul. They were just the front doors.
It was just the closed doors. They just knocked all the closed doors and set them on fire.
Here, Gary, I tell you what, Gary, and hello to all our folks listening tomorrow night, which is tonight, if you're listening on Paisley FM, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that ends up on Friday if you say tomorrow on Paisley FM.
I know
and on it goes.
They'll get really confused, but I caught the back end of your show last night on Paisley FM, Gary, and I quite enjoyed it. But as I was busy working away, I then heard Paul Stewart's show.
Oh, aye. Oh, am I getting damned with faint praise here?
Paul's got a great show going on there. I must be a blues guy at heart and not a kind of 80s new romantics guy, Gary. I think I've discovered my inner music.
Really? Always knew there was something wrong with you.
I thought Paul done a brilliant show. He does have a real radio voice, though. And so do you, Gary, actually, in all fairness.
Not half.
Not half.
Oh, we don't have to talk a lot of minutes in this show, Andy.
Oh,
especially the first 15 minutes. That's what it's for. We're the warm-up act for the brilliant guests we have on here every week. I've got to say.
Every single week. What else, Gary? What else caught
my eye? I've done something this Monday that I've not done for a long time.
Go on, Gary.
Ask me what it was.
What did you do on Monday that you've not done in an awful long time, Gary?
I just took a day off.
You took a day off, Gary?
I took a day off. I put my legs up on the couch and I decided to read a book.
Right, go on then.
Right, so here we go. I read that on Monday.
Black is the Colour by Seamus. We've had Seamus on the programme, on the show. Remember,
we had Seamus on, he was talking about his book. So my son bought me that for my Christmas. And I get round to reading it. And it's based in Paisley.
Right.
And it brings the West End to life. It's actually a book that I read from cover to cover. It's not a difficult read, but I could actually see it being a screenplay and made into a telly programme, maybe a 3-part series. Sipman must have scored.
How come?
Because Paul's got a big yes.
No, I think he was just saying that because I was complimenting his show.
Okay, kidding on.
You just fell into that one there, Gary.
For goodness sake. I'm so disappointed. Anyway, back to my book review, my weekly book review slot. Black is the Colour, Seamus Conley. It's a brilliant read, Andy. I'd recommend it to you. It's a kind of crime thriller, gangstery thing up the West End of Paisley. Great book.
Good book. I'll have to catch that one. Although I do struggle reading books, Gary. That is the honest answer. I don't read books, but what I do have is I've got this, Gary. I've got Audible.
That's lazy.
Well, no, but see when you're, because as you know, I work in various different geographical locations, Gary. I can be up in Dundee or Aberdeen. So see when you've got a 2-hour drive to kill, you put an Audible book on. It was one of my friends got me introduced to it a number of years ago.
Can you just balance it?
I can't do that when you're driving. The cops will pull you over, Gary. But seriously, listen to a book. You can 2 hours, melts away, disappears. But I'll try and I don't think that one's on Audible yet. Black is the colour, so I'll need to.
Okay.
I'll need to.
So that's one thing that caught my eye. I'm going to tell you that. So that's a book I've just read. This being a book special, Andy. If you've not announced that, and so I'm going to announce this is a book I'm just reading.
Right.
For all you new romantics out there.
Sweet Dreams. The story of the new romantics, Gary. There's Adamant on there.
Okay, Adamant's on there. This is actually a brilliant read. I'm at the talking about David Bowie and Roxy Music and all the influences of the guys. It's from 1975 to 85. And it talks about all the culture, all the music, everybody that was involved. It's a brilliant book.
Fantastic. Well, listen, it's a book special tonight, Gary, and we've got some cracking guests coming up to talk to us about books, those that write them, those that curate them, those that promote them, and we'll talk about the Paisley Book Festival as well. So, folks,
Andy, is there any guests coming on to talk about those that listen to them while they're driving?
Well, I think I'm adequately qualified in the Audible, but listen, I'm not alone, Gary. I'm not alone. There's Jackie Mills saying Audible is awesome to multitask to. Right,
so you can paint and decorate and read. You could read whatever else.
Absolutely, it's great. And there's Mags. Obviously, uses Audible to fall asleep to. You could do that as well, depending on what books you want to listen to.
I remember that crash.
No, when you're driving, Mags. Come on. Right, shall we crack on with the show, Gary? Because we've got.
In a minute.
Did I miss something? Have I not read your script properly, Gary?
No, I'm throwing this bit in. And here's another wee book. Here's another wee book.
Oh, aye.
I've got that I picked up at the Linda McCartney exhibition at the Kelvin Grove Galleries. See, I didn't know I was full of culture, Andy. So I picked this up. I thought it was a really interesting wee book. It's a coffee table book, if you've got a coffee table. I don't have one.
It's quite a small coffee table book, Gary.
I just don't have a coffee table. So it sits at the back of the couch, and every now and again when I feel a bit of culture coming over me, I just pick up the wee coffee table book and I open it up and I read a quote. So it's a book of the little book of Beatles, quips and quotes from the Fab Four. So Andy, here's the challenge. Every now and again, shout out a number between 1 and 132.
Oof. We'll go for 33, Gary.
Right, okay. Give me a moment.
That'd be good.
Yeah, it's the Beatles, isn't it? Talk among yourself.
Talk completely unscripted, folks.
33 is, I could make this up, Andy, and pretend it's 33. 33, here we go. It was like a tug of war. Imagine two people pulling on a rope, smiling at each other and pulling all the time with all their might. The tension between the two of them made for the bond. George Martin talking about John and Paul. There we go. Random numbers accepted throughout the show.
Absolutely. We'll see who comes up with what. And Gary, before we do go on, did you ever, when you were a wee boy growing up, watch Glenn Michael's Cavalcade?
I did, yes. Paladin was my best mate.
Paladin, well, he would always do a bit in the show when folk would send stuff in. Well, we've had somebody sending something in to us, Gary.
Seriously?
We have. Somebody sent something in, and I kind of thought this is our Glenn Michael moment, because not only has a viewer sent something in, but it's also to wish someone a happy birthday, and it's their birthday today.
Wow, go for it, Andy. Oh, look at that.
So happy birthday, Norma. We'll
Hey,
not
Norma.
mention what age you are, Norma, but happy birthday to
Top of the
Norma.
morning to you, top of the morning to you, Norma.
Now, exactly. She's dressed as a leprechaun there. Now, it might be no surprise to regular viewers, but Norma is my big sister. And see that top left there, that picture there with the 3 wee kids and the father. So that's my brother John on the left.
Mm-hmm.
So when you see John Campbell from Canada, that's John. There's Norma in the middle. And see that wee tote there with the blue and white top on and the shorts? That's me, Gary.
With an inquisitive look.
Inquisitive look, but it is Norma's birthday today. So Norma, happy birthday.
Many happy returns, Norma.
And you can blame your daughter for sending in the image, Norma.
Lovely. Paul Stewart, what you like?
Oh, is he putting up the scores?
Aye, I nearly swore.
Right. Paul,
Anyway.
won't tell us if it's good news, Paul.
Anyway, that's happened before to us with them, and we went on to hump them, so there you go.
Dearie. Right, Gary.
Yes, what's new, Andy? You're in complete control. Are we having a guest? Are we having guests tonight?
We are having guests. Come on, Gary, it's your turn to introduce them. I'll bring them in. I'll bring them into the feed and you introduce them.
All right, you press the buttons.
I'll press the buttons.
So I'm looking for this nom de plume. Ambrose Parry is a new pairing to me.
Right.
Otherwise known as Chris Brookmeyer and Dr. Marissa Hatesman, I think. Did I get that right, Marissa?
Yep, close enough.
Come on, what is it spot on then?
Hatesman.
Right, what I'm going to do to kick this off, give me a number.
42.
42.
That's the episode number tonight and also the answer to life, the universe and everything.
40.
That's better be a good one, Gary.
Chapter 2. It's page 42.
Chapter 2.
There you go.
Appropriate.
42.
Chris and Marissa, welcome to Paisley Community Chat Show. It's fantastic to have you joining us. Hope you're both doing well and keeping busy.
I'm certainly keeping very busy. Yeah, we've been occupying ourselves all through lockdown, all through the summer, just writing because there's nothing else to do. So it's a very productive time.
Yeah.
For you writers, you may think there's nothing else to do but write.
That's kind of it. You don't get in the way, or there's nothing to get in the way of creativity, or at least there's no promotion, there's no travelling around to get in the way of it. So we had no excuse really, and we did find that the time passed a lot quicker over the summer months when we were working on something.
I'm intrigued by the JV that you've got going on. How does it work? Is it being really stupid and not a writer? Chris, do you take the left-hand page and Marissa, do you take the right-hand page? Or is it slightly more creative and different than that?
Well, I think because we have very different backgrounds. So Chris has been racing for about 25 years and I'm relatively new to it. But I have... I've got a medical background and I've done a degree in the history of medicine, so I provide a lot of the historical detail and Chris comes up with the plot and then we kind of, but we still both write it.
I don't think it's actually fair to say I come up with a plot. I often come up with the ways to make the plot unnecessarily complex. That you usually come up with the actual plot in terms of what's going to be revealed, because Marissa's knowledge of anaesthetics and also knowledge of history of medicine means that she will find an area of like 19th century medicine, she'll find some kind of evil machinations that somebody could be up to that fits within that framework. And then I'll come up with ways to make that as complicated as possible.
Yeah.
But we've written 3 novels together now and the process keeps evolving. It's not as if there's an easy way that we just go to and say, right, you do this bit and I'll do that bit. And we do kind of rewrite each other's material.
Yeah.
And do you edit each others then and critique and go, that could be slightly different and that could be slightly better, or does it quite dovetail in with what I've just done type of thing?
Aye.
There's not an awful lot of correcting things. Although occasionally I'll read something Chris has written and I'll say, did you look that up? Did you research that? And he'll usually say, nah. I just made it up. So then I have to go and sort it out.
When she asked that question, have you researched this? There's a wee part who wants to lie, but I know that she'll check the source, and there'll be whatever it was I put in will get taken out again because it's not historically accurate.
Yeah, you've got to make sure it's right. Now, you've got such a huge body of work, Chris, from way back in 1996, your sort of debut title, I guess, and then ultimately as Ambrose Parry, the last 3 books that you've worked on. Now, as I mentioned to in the kind of chat pre-show, I listen to a lot of books on Audible, and I've got in there the Val McDermid's and the Peter Mays, I guess, fantastic Scottish contemporaries. And whenever I talk to people about the books that I listen to, they always say, you would absolutely love Chris Brookmeyer. And I think it's also because of the Paisley connection, we're all from this kind of part of the world. And I'm ashamed to say I've not read or listened to any of your books yet. However, tonight on the show, I know it's a terrible admission, but I'm an honest person. Terrible admission, but tonight I'm going to actually download them and start reading them. But from a pairing point of view, because Chris, with your own books and your the books that you've written, you've got all the story, character development, everything there. But the one thing that makes any sort of crime novel is, for me anyway, I love all the historical all the accuracy of the forensics and the medicine, and because that's where the little threads of the story and the detail lie to try and solve it. So in Ambrose Parry, you're perhaps, between both of you, the absolutely perfect pairing, because you've got all that knowledge, you've got all that detail and that information. So I can't wait to download those books because they sound like they're going to be absolutely what I love.
I've been very fortunate in that Marissa's been a valuable source of technical information for me down the years, because I'm a great believer in just making stuff up, and making it sound like I know what I'm talking about. Yep. But now and again, I need to know. So I'll ask, even like way back writing the first book quite early one morning, I remember asking Marissa to find out things about what would happen if you slashed somebody's throat open and things like that. And then with Be My Enemy, I was saying, would you be able to use human intestines as a rope to slide down? And Marissa went in and asked a bowel surgeon, and he said, yeah, you could, but he did point out that you would start to squeeze out the contents and so I used that. So yes, I thought that's disgusting. I totally have to use that.
I, of course, but since I've come on board, I've kind of classed things up a wee bit. There's less abseiling down intestines, and it's a bit more kind of not sober, but a bit more kind of accurate, less nonsense.
Mm-hmm. Aye. That's my wife just dismissing almost my entire oeuvre.
I've just remembered something, Chris. I gave one of your books away, and this was quite a moment, and I want to ask you if this is true or not, and it might be something that you can't talk about. But just behind me, there's a poster, Eddie Reader, mid-year. That was 2 gigs I put on, separate gigs at the Town Hall. One was mid-year, and he's my musical hero. And I read about him, done a bit of research before it, and knew that he liked dark thrillers. So I picked up one of your books that I had read, and I wanted to do I write my name in the back thing and pass it on to him. So I took up the actual paperback copy when I met him. I says, Midge, how's it going? I heard you like thrillers and stuff like that. And I gave him a book, and he went, that's interesting. We've just been asked to do a soundtrack for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, there was something a few years ago. There was some company that was getting musicians to try and compose things that were suggested by the atmosphere of certain writers' work.
Okay.
But nothing ever came of it, you know, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
And is this because I mean, I know we're talking about Audible again, but, you know, they do put a lot of production value into some of the recordings, you know, in terms of the choice of the narrator, but then some of the sort of atmospheric music, as you like, and then sound effects and all those sort of things, you know. Do you see that as the Audible side of things, is that a good enough substitute for sitting down and thumbing the pages of a good book? Are you traditionalists in that sense?
Well, I think I understand the appeal of Audible, but I have to say I think I prefer reading, and I think you say that too. That sometimes it's the fact that I think I read faster than a book is narrated, usually. So I think I get a wee bit frustrated at how much slower it is when you're listening.
Yeah.
I think we've been served very well by the audiobooks, in that we've the Canongate of the audiobooks of the 2 Ambrose Parry books so far. They've got great acting talent to help bring it to life, and it's that can add to atmosphere, and it can add to just the I guess the delivery. You know, I suppose a trained actor's voice and delivering it might be better and more dramatic than the voice in your own head, but maybe it's not. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm very much in agreement with Marissa that I've tried a couple of times to listen to books in the car, and I'm just so impatient. I'm thinking I'd be, you know, a page and a half past that by now, and so I find that a wee bit frustrating. And there can be weird things about the choice of who's narrating that you wouldn't anticipate.
Yeah.
I mean, Mark Billingham, one of his audiobooks, they had to rewrite part of the audiobook because there was a massive spoiler in the fact of who was narrating. Because there's things that you can maybe fool the reader into thinking that they're hearing the voice of a man that turns out to be a woman, or vice versa.
Oh yeah.
You can't do that once it's an audiobook. That's set in stone. You can't mess with it.
Yeah.
So there's obviously upsides and downsides.
Yeah, because I suppose with an audio book, you hear the accents, you hear the voices, etc., but with a real book, you're really, you know, your job as authors is to really fire and stoke the imagination, getting the reader to really kind of invent all the gaps, paint a picture of their own characters and so on. And I guess ultimately, I mean, content is king, story is king. What about inspiration for both of you? I mean, I know the recent books as Ambrose Parry have taken place in the sort of 19th century sort of thing, going back in time. But, you know, is that because of a personal interest that you have, or is something in everyday life just the trigger for inspiration for the novels that you create?
Well, I think you have a variety of inspiration for your own novels, don't you?
Yeah, but Ambrose Parry is fairly specific.
Yeah, it really came about because I was reading about James Young Simpson and the history of anaesthetics and the discovery of chloroform, and I started telling Chris a bit about some of the stuff that I had been reading. And Simpson was such an interesting character. He had a long and fascinating life, and full of tragic moments, and he was a very mischievous character, which I think is what appealed to you more than anything else. Yeah. And he had a sense of humor, and his household just sounded a bit bonkers. So I think it was kind of those aspects of him. He was definitely not a kind of stuffy Victorian gentleman, you know, all that idea you have about the Victorian period and middle-class people and how reserved and uptight they were. He was none of those things, and I think that was really probably what was most interesting.
I felt this was somebody that was responsible for one of the greatest discoveries in all of the history of medicine, and people didn't know who he was, you know. Yeah. So I felt like we had a great opportunity here. Nobody had beaten us to it, and so it wasn't something I'd have embarked upon on my own. You know, even if I'd learned about this, it would have been too daunting to try and do justice to it. But I thought, well, if we do it together and I've got someone to write with who can, who knows where the value of the story is and who can navigate this whole world for me. So that's how that came about. I mean, the inspiration there is fairly obvious, and with Simpson, there's no end of inspiration for subsequent stories. So we've written 3 now, and we've got lots of ideas for the 4th.
Yeah. And do you map them out? Is that a storyboard type thing you do, or is it a slightly different writing technique?
I think I usually have about 6 months or so to work on story ideas while Chris is writing his own book. So I kind of do a lot of the background stuff, and I like, it's almost like having a mood board, you know, like you do for decorating. So I usually have old photographs or images of the places that we're talking about, and all sorts of bits and pieces. And then I have an idea of what the story is going to be like, and then Chris comes along and kind of messes it all up. It makes everything really complicated. So much so that I spend a lot of time thinking, what? I don't understand.
And did you do that in your early books, Chris? Did you just put up pictures of Paisley places and St Mirren players?
Marissa's far more methodical than me. You know, I just have it all stays in my head, and I suppose that's, if you write about places, you don't need the photographs, you know, because you've already been there. I mean, I've got a book coming out in just a few weeks called The Cut, and it's drawing upon things I already knew about, because I used to work for Screen International back in the 80s and 90s. And it was a cinema trades paper, and a lot of it dealt with sort of independent filmmaking. And that, you say independent filmmaking, people think you're talking about art house cinema, but what this meant was like usually kind of exploitation cinema, you know, horror movies. So it's a book about that side of things, and about the moral panic over the video nasties back in the 1980s, where the Tories were basically trying to blame all of the social breakdown on a few horror videos rather than on things like mass unemployment. So the book draws on that. I mean, I'm a great believer in that when you're writing a novel, you're writing at least 100,000 words. It's a hell of a shift. So you need something that drives your enthusiasm. So if you write about something that you're hugely enthusiastic about, it's a lot easier. So in Marissa's case, she's got boundless enthusiasm for the history of medicine, and boundless enthusiasm for writing about things like horror movies. So yeah, it's always a question of finding a vehicle for the stuff that you want to be talking about anyway.
Yeah, and often heard it said, you know, everyone's got a book in them, but ultimately the you know, your 100,000 words, you know, that writing down the first word or the first sentence is probably the most difficult for those budding writers. And obviously we've had Seamus Conley's own book out there, but those that are thinking, I've got an idea, I've got a concept, what would be your sort of suggestions of how they would start going about creating and writing their own book?
Do you want me to answer that? I'm still quite new to this, and I would say that I think it's to do with structure. I think a novel is such a kind of big thing. It's 100,000 words is a lot. It takes much longer than you think it's going to take. It's going to be months and months of work. But I think structure is really important. Understanding you need a beginning, a middle, and an end. It sounds obvious, but people don't often think that. You don't sit down and just write chapter 1 and start writing. Well, I don't think many people do it that way. I think you really need to think a lot and do a lot of preparation before you actually start the writing.
I think, the analogy I like to draw is it is a bit like you're painting your living room, and you think that the majority of the work is going to be slapping on paint, and actually a huge amount of the work is going to be preparing surfaces and taping off the areas you want to mask. And that's what it's like writing a book. You spend ages before you're writing chapter 1, you know, because you need to know your themes and your characters. So I think the main piece of advice I give people is probably kind of start small, you know, start trying to, even if you want to explore a theme, try and explore it first of all in a way that's quite manageable. And then once you get a sense of structure, that's... So
do you think a short story would be the best way to start?
So. I mean, I'm unusual, and I'm not a big fan of short stories. When I was
Yeah.
But I think Marissa's right. Structure is hugely important. It's when you know yourself in advance where you're taking the story, you'll tell it much better. If you're trying to work out for yourself as you write.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes that'll tell you things you didn't know about your character, and that can be fascinating. But equally, you can be just writing yourself into a corner because you don't really know what you're trying to do.
And I mean, again, it's one of those kind of daft questions, but you should always ask daft questions. I think, do you write it with the story in mind, or do you write it with what you're doing to the reader in mind, or a bit of both? In fact, what I guess you're obviously writing the story, but are you doing it from a kind of, I'm going to take the reader on this journey, or are you just telling? I don't know if I phrased that question right, but
I know what you mean. I think the thing working with Chris, who's so experienced, you kind of know what the story is, but he knows exactly how he's going to relay the information and how he's going to hide certain things and when he's going to reveal certain things, how to build up tension. Yeah. So I think you're very adept at that because of all your experience.
Yeah, I think you've got a story you want to tell, and there's often bits you're looking forward to writing. You think, oh, this bit will be great. But you're always thinking, when you say this bit will be great, what you mean is when the reader sees this, they're going to really enjoy it, or they're going to be shocked by it, or whatever. So the reader's experience of it is in your mind all the time. Not just in crime fiction where you're trying to control the information. I think all the time you're trying to think, what is the reader's emotional response to what I'm writing just now? So I think you've always got that in mind.
Chris and Marissa, we've overran again, and it's dead easy to do it when it's so interesting. We can talk all day about what you're speaking about, and I've not even asked you about Lex Richardson yet, Chris. But we'll gloss over Lex Richardson because he's my favourite footballer ever, and he became one of your characters. So you can talk all night about that. But I want to get in what you're doing at the book festival before we finish. Could you tell us a bit about what's happening with you guys at the Paisley Book Festival, please?
We're on Sunday the 21st at 3:00 in conjunction with the University of West of Scotland.
The event is being chaired by a professor of criminology. So I think there's going to be a huge amount of interesting stuff. I'm sure he's going to delve into some of the villains in the book, hopefully, which should be really interesting. I'm looking forward to it enormously, actually.
We're going to be talking about the art of dying, principally, which is the second of the books, and the way of all flesh, which was the first of them.
The art of dying, Andy, that's an interesting subject, isn't it?
Well, it's an interesting subject. Maybe not so much about dying, but maybe what happens post-death as well. This is one of the things that myself and Gary have talked about. We'll need to see what we can do there.
We're thinking of a chat show special, so maybe get you back on to talk about the art of dying, because we're thinking about having a death special. And we've got chatting about it. Just interesting. Before we finish, let's ask you this question about death, if you don't mind.
This is taking a turn, Gary. It's taking a turn.
No. It's going to finish on a light note. A light note about death, it's about the song. What's the song that you go down in whatever direction to?
Oh,
your playlist, your funeral playlist, Gary.
Your funeral playlist.
Oh my goodness!
You know, thought it.
No, I haven't decided that. No,
there's not been written yet.
Over the Chinese.
Anything written round about 2075, I think, will be grand.
Well, I've got
Rolling Stones number then.
I've got one final question from me, because clearly I was very honest at the start and mentioned that I've not read the books, and I mentioned the word yet. So I've got 2 credits on Audible. I've got Ambrose Parry, The Way of All Flesh, which is your first one. And I'm looking for a second. Chris, out of your many, many books that you've got, which one would you recommend that I start my journey with you on?
What do you think?
Well, we usually say, when this question comes up, we usually say One Fine Day in the Middle of the Night. It's quite an old book now, but it's very funny, and it's about a bunch of Paisley school kids who are going to a reunion after about 20 years, isn't it?
Former pupils of a Renfrewshire secondary school, and it's about their high school reunion, which gets attacked by hijackers.
Oh, right. That
It's like an action comedy.
I went to a Renfrewshire high school, so right, One Fine Day in the Middle of the Night. Right, I'll look at that one on Audible.
Well, the other one that I might chuck in there would be A Tale Etched in Blood and Hard Black Pencil, which is entirely about going to school in Renfrewshire.
I can see that. I can see that one, but I can't see the other one. I've got the Rubber Ducks one, but I can see A Tale Etched in Blood and Hard Black Pencil. Now,
I recommend that one in particular.
Super.
What was the first Parleybain book?
Quite Ugly One Morning.
Yeah, that's a good start as well.
Right. I need
Because
to
that takes you into a character that's in a number of books, Andy.
Jaggy Splinters. Oof.
If you're into that.
To both of you, thank you so much indeed for coming on the chat show. Sorry we overran, but I think what you have, Gary is clearly already a fan, but what you've now got is another fan to add. And for the Paisley Book Festival that's coming up, wish you all the best. Hope that goes absolutely smashing. But thanks once again for coming on tonight's show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, Gary, how we doing?
Hey, Andy, we need to push on because Kira's getting the bus.
We've got a lot on. We could have talked books all night. Absolutely fascinating subject.
I remember reading Chris's books and that one that's got the skids in it and Lex Richardson, and there's one they're sliding down I can't remember what the lassie's name is. She might actually be Lex Richardson, sliding down Lochsloy Power Station and all that. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, listen, we've got a short interlude before we bring our next guest on, which is Kira Brown, who's going to tell us all about the Paisley Book Festival. But as always, the slot, and we'll maybe ask Annette for a number, is Question of the Week. Annette, how are you?
I'm doing good, thank you. How are you guys?
We're great, but sorry for keeping you as always. Annette, what are you reading?
Shuggy Bean.
I hear it's really good. Quite a sad book.
Yeah, just started it. Quite hard hitting actually. So just started.
I sometimes start with the question, Annette, does it get big writing in it?
Am I?
Aye, the big writing. That's a good book then if it's got big writing. See if that was a thick book and it was tiny writing, I could have read it.
Oh, it'd be a struggle for you, Gary. It'd be a struggle. That's why I listen to them, because I can't track my eyes along a page that well. And a question of the week. Thank you so much for.
Give me a number.
4.
Hold on, talk among yourself.
That'll be contents or something like that. Is it?
Give me another number.
44. 66.
Clickety click.
66. Nobody's posted up numbers tonight, Gary. We're number 3.
This could be a regular thing.
No.
There's Gary quoting from his
66. Here we go.
Right.
Animation is not just for children. It is also for adults who take drugs. Paul McCartney in the Yellow Submarine, 1968. There you go.
We're not endorsing any drug taking, of course. So, Annette, question of the week. Let's talk about last week's question of the week, and then we'll talk about this week's question of the week.
Yeah, so last week's came out of the report that came out about shopping locally and getting people supporting their local community more. So we asked, after COVID and lockdown, would you be more likely to shop in Paisley?
Right.
And we had a good response again this week, so thanks again. And we had 76 of the respondents say yes, they're more likely to shop in Paisley. but there wasn't much chat online this week for some reason.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
we also had 24% say no. So more of the chat was around the no.
Yep.
And that kind of, what they were saying was that they didn't know where to shop. Paisley didn't have what they needed, and that the real shops were in Braehead, Silverburn, and Glasgow. So if I'm okay to say, what we did as a family this week is
Of course.
we go and shop locally and try and do everything local. So we purchased all our fresh meats and vegetables from the likes of our local butchers, Gledock and Cunningham's vegetable shop up at the top of New Street, which is a lot, not so local directly, but is a good supplier for Paisley. And then we sought out the new Barnhill farm shop.
Where's that, Annette?
So that's just outside the grounds of the at the airport. So
Right.
just behind the airport. And that's where they sell that fancy bread that you had on your show the other week.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that was really good. But what was really interesting was that farm shop is all about promoting local produce. And they asked me to ask any local producers to get in touch with them to actually take shelf space in their shop. So they've sourced local beer and local cheese and all of that sort of stuff. So their whole goal is to promote local producers, which was fantastic.
Well, that's interesting. I've got a wee box with rhubarb in it over there.
Right.
What are you thinking?
Are you thinking of selling your rhubarb, Gary?
Aye, I've got about 6 stocks that come up every spring, summer.
Don't know if you would get much away from that, but we can always ask them. So that's Barnhill Farm Shop. But as you were saying, Annette, there's a lot of the chat online was just folk knowing what's in the town, but there's some apps and things like that as well, is there not?
Well, if I'm truly honest, like yourselves, I didn't know that Paisley First had an app. So what we did as well is when we were looking for things, we were trying to find things around Paisley to say, well, why are they not shopping? There is things here. So the Paisley First app is available for anybody to use, and it's got shopping, eating out, bars, restaurants, dentists, everything in it. So
wow.
If I could promote that for them and shout about that, then guys, get that downloaded and you'll be able to see all the things in the centre of Paisley.
Yeah. And obviously
as well, and with the Paisley Eats thing as well.
Yeah, Paisley Eats as well. And they had a big competition, didn't they, this week? I put my own entry in as well for one of my favourite restaurants. But the Mill magazine was doing some great features on all our local restaurants as well. So lots of stuff happening locally. So I think overall 4% convinced.
Yeah, I think overall, before we move on to what the question is this week, that's an encouraging sign. We as we've spoken about, we had Provost Lorraine Cameron on the very first show, and she talked about her intent to make sure that she really supported all the local traders post-COVID, and this sort of feeling of localism is really it's there, it's evident, a great number. So once COVID relaxes, I think it's really it'd be really great of everyone if we can go out and support those local traders and support those local businesses, because boy, they've had it tough. And we know that the Amazons of the world, they've been run off their feet. So if there's a wee opportunity to shop local, whether it's your weekly food shopping or gifts, birthdays, clothes, whatever it might be, give Paisley a chance. And the Paisley First app is there to give you a wee bit of guidance on what's where. So excellent, Annette. Thanks.
Look out for that, Annette. Thanks for bringing that to it.
No problem, definitely, and I'll be using it myself. But a really interesting one also came out around going to local concerts and local festivals, and obviously the book festival being popular just now on our site and stuff. So one of the questions was around a bandstand, and that Paisley had a bandstand. So I had to go and do a little bit of research around that myself and see, well, did we? And we actually did, which was amazing. So we had a bandstand in Barshaw Park. Do you have the picture?
I do, and I don't have the picture as an independent, but this is going to form the next question of the week. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it is. So the bandstand was actually there in 1935, and it got demolished in the mid-60s due to some vandalism that happened. And then what then happened? We then put the mini zoo in, and you all know the zoo that was in Barshaw Park. Well, that's where it was. But that's all sadly gone as well. So the question that was asked from me was, would it be okay, or could we get the Barshaw bandstand back up and running again and brought back to bringing out outdoor events and music events or art events back to Paisley?
Wow, that's a great question coming in from the community. Should we bring back the bandstand? Gary, are you old enough to remember the bandstand in Paisley and Barshaw?
No, but I remember the zoo. I do remember the zoo and the two donkeys.
But listen, folks, that's a great question. So would you like to see Barshaw bandstand brought back, bringing outdoor music and art events back to Paisley? As always with the question of the week, and it's a yes or no answer. It's a either or. It's no discussion on there, because what we want you to do is join the conversation on the Facebook page. Is that right, Annette?
Yeah, that's great. The Facebook interaction is brilliant, and we're getting lots of insights to what's happened in Paisley and what people would like to see in Paisley. And there's lots of music talent out there in Paisley, but also we could attract it. We could attract it away from Glasgow and bring tourism and bring, people to Paisley. So I really want people to interact with this one. It'll be fantastic to know your thoughts.
Brilliant.
Pictures before, and it looked similar to what the Glasgow bandstand looked like back in the day at Kelvin Grove. So there's nothing stopping us. And again, everyone, it's a debate, it's a conversation. We're not starting a campaign to bring back the bandstands in Paisley, but it's the start of a germ of a discussion that you never know where it might go.
Absolutely. And as if by magic, anyone that's watching on your smartphone, you'll not be able to do this, but if you've got your smartphone sitting at the side of you, what I want you to do is dig out your smartphone.
I'm not doing that.
Go to your camera, hold it up to the screen now, and then that should open up Survey Monkey. Your question is there, and all you need to do is answer yes or no, and click done, and then that's you. You're taking part in the survey. So excellent, Annette. Thank you so much indeed.
No problem. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on again, Annette.
You're welcome.
We'll see you later on. Take care, Annette. Bye now. Bye.
Andy, I've just seen an interesting comment that I misread.
There's a park in Gourock with an amphitheatre. How did you misread that, Gary?
I said there's a park in Gourock with an armpit theatre, and I was wondering what it was.
Oh, it's an armpit theatre. I have no idea, Gary.
So it's one of them.
Well, listen, folks, we're running behind as usual. Only 14 minutes behind, Gary. That's not too bad, really, is it?
Akira was warned. There was the small print.
The small print. If you're a guest in the show, we may overrun. Well, without further ado, Gary, I think we need to bring on our next guest onto the chat show.
Let's bring Kira.
Hello, Kira. How are you?
Not bad. How are you guys this evening?
Not bad. Apologies for the overrun.
That's absolutely fine.
But before we push on,
have you got a number ready? Go, give us a number then, Kira. What was the number?
Go for number 13. It feels apt this year.
13. Jeez,
number 13.
Talk among yourselves. Here we go.
Right.
The fans gave their money and they gave their screams, but the Beatles gave their nervous system. George Harrison, 1995. There we go.
Wow, amazing. Kira, thanks so much for joining us tonight on Paisley Chat Show. And I guess what we ask some of our guests from time to time is, tell us a wee bit about yourself. So who are you? What do you do? And in particular, because we're on to talk about Paisley Book Festival, tee that up as well for us. So over to you, Kira.
Okay, so I'm Ciara Brown. I'm co-producer of Paisley Book Festival. I've been working in books since, more years than I've not been working in books. So since I was 18, been trying to get people to read through various forms. Obviously, that makes sense in terms of now working on Paisley Book Festival and curating a programme of events with co-producer Jess Orr. So the two of us worked last year on Paisley Book Festival 2020, the inaugural one, which we were fortunate to see in person. But this year we're doing it again, obviously with more challenges doing it online, but you guys know all about that.
Indeed.
Yeah, totally different challenge for you this year, Ciara. But are you building on the success of last year and taking forward lessons into that new format?
Yeah, I think so. We're trying to sort of have a positive outlook when it comes to that sort of digital format and trying to use it in the best way that we can. Trying to think about how we can make the festival entirely digital and also make it very much about Paisley. So it's trying to do all of those things and also build on the success of last year's festival. We did learn lots from last year, thinking that we'd be doing another in real life festival again. So having to change our goalposts quite frequently, there's always another challenge that we're facing. But, you know, we want to see this festival happen, so we're bringing it again. And it does mean that we can bring in maybe some more international names and international faces. So there's a positive there.
Yeah. And how many years has the book festival been running for now in Paisley, Ciara?
So this is only its second.
Only its second year. Wow.
Yeah, I mean it's a massive for a festival to get off and running and be as successful as the first one was, and relatively high profile in the town, to then be hit with a pandemic, and it must have been how are we going to do this? Did you actually face that dilemma?
Yeah, we faced that dilemma a few times, but you know, as I say, we tried to keep that optimistic outlook. I mean, if it wasn't for the digital element, we probably wouldn't be able to get the Booker Prize winner, Douglas Stewart. You know, there's quite a few, as I say, international names that are on that programme that possibly wouldn't have been doable if it wasn't for this. So I think the one thing that it does allow us to do, and I've been speaking about this with many programmers and directors of book festivals, is it actually allows us to go back and review our processes of what we've been doing for years and actually, you know, what might be working better for us. So you've probably seen that Edinburgh are doing a hybrid festival now, and they've actually moved their premise. So it's just getting us to think about, you know, what we're doing and is there something we could be doing better?
Yeah. And I think ultimately, you made the point there about being online, and that provides actually a lot of challenges, but some opportunity to get people that you just ordinarily wouldn't have been able to get. Do you also find that it opens your audience up to you? Because I would imagine Paisley Book Festival, you know, in terms of its early stage planning, you're a very sort of key idea of who your audience might be. Has things changed with online now, Ciara? I would imagine it probably has opened out slightly.
It has opened up slightly, though, you know, the key objective with the Paisley Book Festival is it's first and foremost for the Renfrewshire residents. So, you know, we want to keep that in mind, but obviously it does mean that we're able to sort of look at a sort of more expat community focus. So, you know, we've maybe been targeting a little bit more around, you know, Canada, Australia. I think it's a very Scottish programme. I feel like, you know, so particularly Scottish expat communities, like I think it can stretch there. But as I say, we don't want to exclude our audience from last year either. So we've been doing other things as well, like, you know, there's a certain thing about digital poverty that we've been thinking about in older audiences and trying to like engage with them through maybe care homes or various other means so that, you know, they can get access to. So that, it does raise some questions when you start doing it digitally in that sense in terms of access. Yeah.
So accessibility, you mentioned a lot there, and I'm not a big book reader, but do you find that the festival actually brings readers to books that maybe hadn't read before, or is that one of the goals and objectives of the festival?
That is one of the goals and objectives. I find that if you can make a subject seem interesting, then it sort of does mean that people are more likely to pick up that book. For example, like, as I say, I've worked in books for years, and reluctant readers, quite often they will be hooked into a book maybe by something that they're interested in. So, like, for example, yourself, Gary, like, you know, a book that's about football, if you're a reluctant reader, then that would maybe sway you to actually get more involved in reading. So yeah, and I think events and something that sort of creates a bit of buzz and excitement around the time is also going to perhaps, you know, it creates a space for people to consider reading. It creates a space for people to actually engage with authors. And, you know, that's what we want people to do, because ultimately that way they'll get something from that. Even if they don't go and pick up the book afterwards. I mean, we obviously do want them to, but I think, you know, it creates this space for interesting debate and discussion, and just to allow a little bit of thought and provocation.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, like Andy, I find it difficult to make time for books. So the way Andy does it is he makes the book fit his time, type of thing, by having an audio book. I made a book fit my time on Monday, so I took a day off just to relax and read a book. But I always find that I've got books lying around the house that I've read like 3/4 of it, and I never ever go back to it, because I find that really, really difficult. But what I found, what you mentioned there, that subjects that are of interest, I started to read autobiographies of people that inspired me in life. And I picked up Sting's autobiography. I don't know if you've read that, Kira, but it's really weird at the start, and it hooks you in. It's actually, if I can share a wee bit of it, the start of it is not a traditional, I'm Sting, I was born in Northumbria, and I got into music. It was, I'm in the middle of the Amazon jungle, and I'm out my brain, and I'm like that, and I'm going, where's this book going? And it just takes you right in, and then it weaves. So that, I mean, there's, and I'm going to use this name carefully, Andy. Going to mention this name carefully, because we've had Pig Bennis commenting, how does someone get into reading that's never had the concentration span to read books? That's what I've done. Now, how does the book festival translate that desire and requirement into audience building?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Yeah, just how do you get an audience from, like, guys like, and I know that's Ramy, who finds it difficult to get an attention span for reading, actually interested in the festival and interested in reading books? I
think it goes back to what I was saying before about that buzz and energy around the town. So, you know, it becomes very different when it's not just about reading books with the book festival. It's about listening to interesting people speak. And I think that's where it becomes a little bit more, you know, having, you know, Booker Prize winner like Douglas Stewart in a room with Graham Armstrong, who writes books that are, I would say, a little bit more accessible. And then also Andrew Hagan, who's been writing for quite a long time and actually touches upon Paisley within his new book, Mayflies. You know, creates a very different discussion than just having maybe one of those writers in a room. Kirsten Innes's event, where she is reading some of Scabby Queen, but with music that is, I think, influenced by Scabby Queen, with Uti Smith from, I think I pronounced that right, out in Lochwinnock. You know, that creates a very different type of event as well. It's not just about the book, it's actually like thinking more broadly about how, you know, we've got that creative element that comes into it, and it becomes again about the events. And I think that's where books can become more interesting, because, you know, as Andy touched upon before, you know, your imagination's stoked by the fact that it's something you read on a page. And I think what has been really nice is that our authors' imaginations have been stoked by the fact that we're doing this digital festival and trying to think up new ways in which we can make it more entertaining for people than just reading from their books.
Yeah, because I mean, a great book's it's a fantastic journey to go on. The character development, the story arc that's in there, the narrative, and ultimately that firing of the imagination. Because you do start to paint out a picture of what an environment might look like or whatever. But you also want to, particularly, I guess, and if it's crime thriller that you're reading, who done it and why did they do it, what was the motive, in a book that's engaging in that regard. But that's a very small genre, I guess. But what a book festival needs to do is appeal to a broad demographic and a broad age range as well. So, is there something for everyone in the book festival? And tell us some of the highlights that you've got coming up, Kira.
I would say certainly there is something for everyone. So I'm just going to show you some of the titles that I've been reading recently, and I think it will give a key reflection. So this one here, sorry, can you see that okay? Giant's Tea Party by Vivienne French. That was actually just published on the 6th of February. She's going to be reading some excerpts from that. So that's obviously for the youngins.
Yep.
We have a river.
For you, Andy, that one?
As for me, I could get that.
This one's for maybe more sort of sci-fi dystopian readers amongst you. So Curtia Newland, who's actually one of the writers from the Small Axe series. I don't know if you heard about that. Steve McQueen directed those series of films. So Curtia has just recently had this book published by Canongate. Very interesting concept, and I would urge people to pick that one up if they're into sort of sci-fi and fantasy. And we had Annette talk about it earlier. Sorry, I've just got the proof. I don't have the beautiful edition that she's got, but Shuggie Bain, that obviously draws upon more difficult times, and we've got an event that's entirely on Scottish masculinity within, a certain period in Glasgow. And that's going to be of interest. This book, you were speaking about death earlier, aptly. So this one has just recently been published by Canongate as well. A beautiful poet by the name of Selena Godin. This is her debut novel, Mrs. Death, Mrs. Death. And it's a sort of magical, sort of realism, stunningly told tale that is quite out of this world, and that has already been picked up by Idris Elba's production company.
Wow!
So that's already got its rights taken to be turned into something. So that's just a sort of glimmer snapshot into some of the books that we'll be discussing over the festival.
It's a great cross section, Kira. One thing I was going to ask about the festival. And that I'm quite interested in, because I mentioned earlier about Seamus's book and how I could picture it in my head becoming a TV series or a screenplay type of thing. Is there any workshops or anything like that going in through the festival that could say, you've got a book, here's how to turn it into a screenplay type of thing? Or am I backing up the wrong tree?
We don't have anything that's on how to turn it into a screenplay. We do have some workshops with the theme being Radical New Futures this year. So we've been sort of really focusing a little bit on how we come out of this lockdown and sort of new narratives in regards to that. So we've got a workshop that's on book binding and journaling, which I think a lot of people have been doing during these last 12 months. We've got a poetry masterclass with Alicia Per-Mohammed. We've got a children's workshop with Yovel Sommer, who creates the most beautifully illustrated books about insects and birds and bees and all the rest of it. Because I think we've really sort of seen this past 12 months how nature and green spaces have been so significant for us. So we've got those workshops, but none on screenwriting.
Yeah, you mentioned something really quite interesting there about the whole kind of journaling, people taking that up over the sort of lockdown period. And I think ultimately, and Chris and Marissa touched on it, all they've been doing is writing. And I guess when you're in a situation that's new to all of us, if you are a writer or have got an interest in that, you've probably maybe even been forced into position to do that. But we're all exploring brand new themes, brand new challenges to the human race. Obviously, we can see that there's, I guess, to a certain degree, a polarization in people's behaviour. Some quite happy to follow guidance and adhere to COVID and mask wearing, and then you've got other people who see a darker side to this whole thing going on. So it'll be interesting to see what content falls out of the bottom of all of this. I guess the next number of years we'll be talking about this indelible print on the human race that we've experienced in 2020 and now into 2021, Ciara.
No, certainly. And I think that's why we're delighted to be able to offer most of our events for free this year, after thinking about the challenge that everyone has been facing. So we're grateful to be in a position to do that, through the support from Renfrewshire Leisure and Renfrewshire Council and Future Paisley.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the programme, Ciara, but producing and co-producing Paisley Book Festival is not the only thing you do. And you've got your own fountain website that you run.
Yeah, we recently had to change that as well, because it used to be fountain.eu, and obviously Brexit has meant that we've had to change it to fountain.scot. But yeah, I've been doing that. I think this must be coming up for about 5 years now. And it's a voluntary run organisation, and it allows writers the opportunity to get work published. So we engage with what's going on culturally within Scotland. And it's been great for the last 5 years. We have curated some events as well, one of which is actually going to be at the Paisley Book Festival. That's the one that's going to have the beautiful Selena Godden speaking about Mrs. Death, Mrs. Death. We've also got Heath Common, who is an ex-music journalist who used to write for Melody Maker. He's going to be reading some poetry around COVID that was published in an anthology called Viral Verses. We've also got the stunning Jeanette Ayachi. She's going to be reading some poetry as well. She recently performed at Burns and Beyond and was amazing. And we've got Adam Stafford, who's going to conclude the evening with his rather avant-garde, frenetic, but yet melodic music. So yeah, there's a lot going on with that event in itself. But yeah, we are mostly a review site. So curating an evening is almost, it's a sheer pleasure, but it's an absolute difficulty to sort of go through everything that you've been reviewing for the last 5 years and then pick, 4 artists.
That's hard to pick. A whole range of things and go, oh, what for? That must be the challenge.
Last year's was great. We had Michael Peterson, who is known for Noi Reiki, Dave Hook, who is known as Solarai. He's a doctor and he's got a PhD in hip hop. And then we had... how
can you do that? Go back there. You're not doing away with that.
A
PhD in hip-hop. How does that happen?
He's got a PhD in hip-hop.
If you study the subject, Gary, if you put in the years, if you, research it and write about it, I'm sure you could get a PhD, and it's an art form. Why not?
We had Sarah Stewart and Holly McNish as well, it was one of my favourite events, but I'm biased.
That variety as well, Ciara, and I know how last year's ended with a musical extravaganza, which you would, to the untrained eye and ear, you would think, how did they get a gig in? And you're finishing a similar vein this year, you know it?
Yeah, well, we're aware of our audience, and Paisley, they enjoy music, right? So tonight, the festival will conclude with the Bookshop Band. I don't know if you've heard of the Bookshop Band, but they're going to celebrate the end of the festival with a specially curated performance on the theme, which is Radical New Futures this year. and they are acoustic folk singer-songwriters that bring in words from books into their music. So expect maybe some of the dystopian and some of the sort of more otherworldly books to come into their music. So that should make for a lovely way to finish the festival.
And let's do a quick recap of the actual event itself. So this is your website. So if anyone's interested in finding out more about the Paisley Book Fest or Book Festival, it's paisleybookfest.com. And that's the website that will tell you everything about it. Kieran, you can keep me right on this one. But I guess the key thing is the event program, where you can see a list of all the events that are that will be taking place. Key dates is the Thursday the 18th to Saturday the 27th. So just over a week's worth of content.
Is there another page on there, Andy? What does page 2 do? Is that take you to the next, Kira, or is it just to the Saturday?
So you can either filter by the dates, or if you go to page 2, then it'll just take you to the next.
Yeah, it just takes you
in a
into the
chronological fashion.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah.
You can do that. So absolutely full.
Jam-packed there, by the looks of it.
And that's the Saturday.
We've also got, I should have mentioned this earlier when, Marissa and Chris were talking about the books that influence their writing. So we've also got our own bookshop this year that's online. You can find that on the homepage of the website. If you scroll down, there's a section on the bookshop, and we've partnered with bookshop.org to create that. And within our bookshop, we've got some of the books that influence the writing. So I think specifically for Chris and Marissa's, they have actually gone and given us some of those books that did influence the art of dying. So if you want to have a little bit more of a browsing experience and be guided by their inspiration as well.
Fantastic. That's
absolutely
brilliant.
Yeah, because a lot of the time, Kira, and I find it anyway, that someone will say, you should have a read at that. It's and if someone says to me, you should have a read at that, it's an easy read, the words are big, then I'm in.
An easy read. For me, I'll listen to a wide variety of stuff, but I struggle to sit down and read. It's just something. But the Audible is, because ultimately it's all about accessibility now. If you're able to tune in to a book and you pick up a favourite author. Peter May has always been one that I was recommended 2 years ago, and I've always enjoyed Peter May's books, and in particular, I like the fact that he used to be an editor on the Paisley Daily Express, which was Paisley's local newspaper, and now he writes crime novels from his place in France. So we've got great talent. Obviously, we had Chris and Marissa on earlier on. So it's great that you're continuing to promote the art and practice of book reading and ultimately book writing as well, by bringing along such a fantastic program, absolutely full of inspirational people. And hopefully for what we've been doing, it's putting the promotion out there to get as many people along as we can. And the dates start on the is it the 18th? Let me just check. The 18th to the 27th of February. So it looks fab, as Sharon Macaulay has just said.
Grand. Well, do come along. As I say, it's free, and you just need to register for tickets, and you'll get the link to make sure that you're there. But thank you very much. We do also, there is lots of talent that's currently in Paisley at the moment as well, not just the likes of Chris and Peter May. We've got Alex Gray that's going to be talking with Diarmuid MacArthur. We've got Brian Whittingham, who's the Tannahill Macker, is going to be doing an event with other poets called How Poets See the World. But there's a whole host of local talent that's involved in that program as well. There's a lot that's going on with Paisley in terms of the sort of poetry and literary scene.
And fingers crossed, 2022 it'll be back to a sort of physical or maybe a sort of hybrid type event, Kira?
Yeah, we hope so. There is something a little bit nicer about being able to see people respond to the programme in person rather than, you know, this blank digital zone that we're in. But yeah, I think it would be really nice if we could actually do something that involves a stage and something a little bit more physical.
Fantastic.
Yeah, let's book that in the diary and look forward to next year. It sounds strange saying that so early in the year, but let's look forward to 2022 and the 3rd Paisley Book Festival.
Yeah, fantastic. In the meantime, all the best with the second one kicking off on the 18th. All the best, Kira. Thanks for coming on the programme.
Kira.
Thank you for having me.
Bye
Right,
now. Bye. What an action-packed week and a bit that's going to be. It's absolutely full of just brilliant sessions, Gary. And it's completely free.
I'll need to take another day off, Andy, and read a book.
Well, I would take me a lot longer to go through a book than a day, but so there's a couple of workshops I think which are maybe priced, folks, but for the vast majority of content in there, it's completely free, and it's all in sort of evenings as well. There's a couple of afternoon ones. That one kicks off at 9:30 p.m. So what we're going to do is put full links upon the PCT website to make sure everyone knows where to go. But PaisleyBookFest.com, Kira and the team have worked really hard pulling together a fantastic programme for you. They've met the challenges of COVID. It's digitally delivered. So if you can, at some point over that weekend, make sure you tune into some of the events. I'm sure they would really appreciate your attendance. Excellent.
Right, Andy, you were about Max Headroom there. I've had some requests.
You've had some requests coming in. Number 27, Gary.
27 first. I've had Mags. There's Jackie.
Number 58.
So Mags first. Number 58. Talk among yourselves.
Oh, Gary.
I need my specs. Here's me being all vain. No wearing my specs. 58. I can make this up. I think is that 58? Anyway, that's 68. Hold on.
That's 58. Max wants number 58.
Number 58. Here it is. This is an interesting one. Because I can't fit them through my nose. Ringo Starr, when asked why he wears 2 rings on each finger. This is highbrow stuff, Andy.
You've frozen, Gary. You've frozen.
No, it's you that's frozen.
Is it? Oh, folks, sorry for freezing. This happened again last week. Gary got kicked out.
Number 27. Right, I'll quickly rattle through these, Andy. I hope we're not going to be here all night with requests. I've hung myself a bit with this, haven't I?
You have, Gary.
Well, it's still part of the show.
Absolutely. We're still going. We've got at least
26, 32, 34. This is how I read books, painting by numbers. Right, here's a long one. Jackie, number 27. I was looking for a name like the Crickets that meant 2 things. And from Crickets, I got to Beatles. And I changed to B-E-A because Beatles didn't mean 2 things. So I changed the E to an A, and it meant 2 things then. When you said it, people thought of Crawley things, and when you read it, it was beat music. John Lennon, 1964.
Had to be John Lennon, that one, didn't it, Gary?
Yeah. Who's next? 62.
62, there's 62, Jane.
Talk among yourselves. There we go. Nearly there. It's a new feature, Andy, I've created. I'm not sure how
I think it's an entire show of its own, Gary, is you narrating books.
This is a very small book, just for those that don't know. That's the wee book there. It's a cracking wee book. Pick it up now and again.
Very small coffee table book, Gary.
It's my level, Andy. 58, 61, 60. Here we go. Somebody said to me, but the Beatles were anti-materialistic. That's a huge myth. John and I literally used to sit down and say, now let's write a swimming pool. Paul McCartney, 1965.
Let's write a swimming pool. Very good. Fantastic.
Materialistic. There you go to think about that one.
Listen,
Well, I do
folks, what's that, Gary?
One more.
Right, one more. What was the next one? So Jane was there, then it's there you go.
101.
101.
Room 101.
It's highbrow this tonight, Gary.
Hey. Don't knock it, Andy. You don't get this in when you're driving.
No, not at all.
101. Hey. Paul, just for you.
Chapter 4.
No. It's almost though. 101 is John, Paul, George, and Ringo.
There you go. As if you didn't know the names of the Beatles, you've
There you
got
go.
it there.
I could go on all night reading that, Andy. And that really
Fantastic. Gary, if you were to read that all night, we need to bring back the buzzer.
Get care off.
Well, listen, that's been another fantastic show tonight. I really enjoyed that. It was great having Chris and Marissa on, and then Kira telling us all about the book festival. That's us all sorted for. That's us all sorted for the kind of next week or so when the book festival comes up.
Yeah, so that's our 3/4 of our show, Andy. That's ended up being an hour and a half again.
Aye.
We need to get tighter. We need to get tighter at this.
We need to get tight. And the thing is, Gary, I've just looked at the book festival schedule for Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
Because the Wednesday, the 24th, they've got something on at 7 o'clock. I don't know how long that's going to last for. And then they've got something on at 9 o'clock. So that might be a 7. See, we're an 8 to kind of 9:30 slot. I hope we don't clash.
Andy, I need to go at 9 that night.
Do you? We maybe go live. We maybe go live to one of the sessions.
I'm narrating the little book of the Beatles at the book festival. It's a stock press.
There are no selling tickets to that one, Gary. Let me tell you.
That's a surprise one. It's the little book of the Beatles, quotes and quips and quotes from the Fab Four. There you go. Recommended.
So, Gary, next week, what's on next week? We always have a wee look at the week ahead. Have you figured out what we're doing?
I'm working on this one, Andy. And if we get it to hang together, it's going to be a show about building Paisley back better.
Right.
I want to put a show together to highlight things that are getting built and things that are being regenerated in and around the town. And that's going to be what the show's about.
Fantastic. So, yeah, because there's been a few new developments underway, so it'll be good to talk about them and talk about some of the things that's going on in the town. And as always, get everybody's input. So we'll see who our guests are. We'll look forward to welcoming our audience as always. And don't forget, question of the week, folks. So I've already had a great response from Annette.
Yeah. Are we bringing back the band?
Gary, 100% of people who have responded so far would like to see the bandstand brought back at Barshaw. So just a quick a reminder, folks, of our question of the week is, would you like to see the Barshaw bandstand brought back, bringing outdoor music and art events back to Paisley? Yes or no. So remember, use the QR code if you want to right now. Take a wee picture of that. That'll take you to the site. You can answer it. Express your views on the Facebook page, and all of that is posted up on the Paisley Community Trust's Facebook page. So it'd be great to see what those results are for next week. And maybe if there's an interest in bringing the bandstand back, maybe some community group, not ourselves, maybe someone else, people of Barshaw, whoever could actually kick that project off. If there's enough of a groundswell there, Andy, and people are having a conversation about it, then why not? And I mean, you know as well as I know how difficult it is to get a group together to champion something. But that conversation might just be the start of that. Absolutely, Gary. Well, listen, folks, it's been wonderful this evening. I've learned a lot. We've got Paisley Book Festival teed up in the coming weeks. But I guess in the meantime, Gary, I think we're done. I think the show's over for this evening.
Yeah, the party's over. Time to call it a day.
Good night, folks.
Good night.